And there you go. Welcome everyone to the show, Timeless Gamer, where the games and gamers grow older while the gaming experiences remain timeless. This is the weekend podcast show that discusses everything about video games, brought to you by Pinoy Retro Gaming. For those who are still not aware, the previous live shows are still available for streaming by going to the Facebook page of Pinoy Retro Gaming or by going to our dedicated YouTube page, which is Timeless Gamer PRG. And of course, you can still catch our live shows by going to the Twitch channel of Pinoy Retro Gaming as well. And our audio format are still quite available by going to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. And just to confirm, we're also in iTunes. Just go search for Timeless Gamer. And we got a wonderful show for all of you guys out there. And just to introduce the panel, let's start with Sir Pao.
Good evening, good
All right.
morning, and good afternoon as well to all other viewers in other parts of the world, and welcome to our show.
All right. Mr. Retro Freak, Sir Raymond.
What's up? What's up?
All right.
Magandang gabi. How are you doing, guys? What's up?
And of course, coming from New Jersey, Mr. Banyagang native, Sir Joel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Timeless Gamer. I hope you have a good time with us today.
And of course, joining us, Mr. Siebert East Retro Gaming.
Hi guys.
All right. And so for the first time ever on this show, we are so blessed and quite proud of having this particular person joining us for this program, coming from England, no? Our very first European co-panelist here on the Timeless Gamer, Mr. Dan Faulkner, one of the moderators of Sega Genesis Facebook group. I give it up for Sir Dan.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right.
Hello, Dan.
So,
Nice to be here.
before we go with the program here, let's give a quick shout out to the chat. How you all guys doing out there? Mr. Sherwin Barbadillo Misas, the first one to be there. Sir Jeff Sardalia representing PRG, and Sir Dan Dice is also there in our end. Sir Dan Dice also watching us on our Twitch feed. All right. All right. So, Sir Dan, since this is your first time being in the Timeless Gamer podcast, we will give the spotlight to you. Just tell us more about yourself, specifically your history in gaming. Let's give it to Sir Dan.
Yes, mate. Gaming background. Started very young, around 4 years old, around 1983. Mainly playing BBC micro games, and then I got into arcade gaming. Got big into arcade gaming, which was a massive thing in the UK. A really vibrant arcade scene over here, and that led me on to getting a Master System first contract because of all the Sega games that were on that. Then progressed into getting the Mega Drive, or Genesis as you know it, which is my favourite console and still is today, and I've played by far and away the most today. I was a big Sega fanboy, but I did cheat on Sega with Nintendo and got myself a Super Nintendo, simply because they also had some cracking games, and yeah, from there, that were the golden era. I got a PC as well, and since then I've had pretty much every generation of console since. But I'd say this generation we're talking about now, the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo is my favourite generation for sure.
All right. So thank you for that, Sir Dan. So, ladies and gentlemen, we got Sir Dan here representing the blue brand of Sega for this particular topic, which is we're going to focus more on the sixth generation, so Siebert? This is a sixth generation, right? between
Yes.
the sixth generation
I lose,
of
I
the
lose track,
console
can't
wars.
I?
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's Sega Genesis versus Super Nintendo, guys. So as you will recall, for all of you guys who's been with this show for quite some time, we've done our console wars movie video game review of console wars by Mr. Blake Harris. On our episode 2, where we discussed the history and the political drama, the backstage, um, hullabaloo regarding Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. No? And unfortunately, on that particular episode, we really didn't focus more on the games themselves. So for our season 3 finale, of Timeless Gamer, we are going to tackle more on the games that made Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo stood out during the 90s console wars. So we're going to start with our I'm going to ask everyone here in the panel, of course, Sir Dan, he already mentioned, but that he's a Sega fanboy. So he's Sega. How about Sir Raymond? What Sega or Nintendo? Nintendo.
Nintendo. Okay, Raymond is on the Nintendo then, the Super NES,
Team
or Super
Nintendo.
Famicom.
Team
There you
Red.
go.
All
As
right.
much I want to do Sega, Nintendo eh.
Hmm.
I still I'm a Nintendo boy eh.
Nintendo
But
boy. How about Sir Pao? Sega or Nintendo?
Hmm. Based on my younger days, I'm more on Nintendo.
Nintendo, of course. How about Sir Joel? Sega or
Well,
Nintendo?
I'm actually of a mixed background. I was heavy into the
Atari.
yeah, as Raymond says, I was started with the Atari and the ColecoVision, but during this generation, I have to say that I was more of a Sega Mega Drive Genesis guy because of the fact that my character is I tend to be a little bit contrarian. I'm the guy who kind of gets the thing that everybody's not into. During our time, as you notice, most of the Filipinos during our generation, during the time of the Sega of the SNES Famicom and Sega Genesis Mega Drive, everybody, as you can tell, was into the into the Super Famicom or Super NES. I went for the Sega Genesis Mega Drive because I saw it. I said, "Hey, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this a little bit better than what everybody's got." So that's what I got. I'm a Sega Mega Drive guy.
All right.
You're
How,
an Atari guy, Tito Joel.
Okay, fine. I'm
he's
an
more of
Atari
a
guy
Atari
first
guy.
and
That's
foremost.
right. How about Sir Siebert? Sega or Nintendo?
Well, obviously, I'm wearing red,
Yeah.
but I'm actually for Sega. So,
Really?
Oh, blue
Okay.
short.
Well, there you go.
No,
yeah,
nothing blue.
nothing blue. Yeah. No,
Nothing
no.
blue.
The reason why I'm wearing red, so I just want to show it before we proceed with the show. So I
It's
just
being
made
ironic.
um. eh, Dan, I just want to ask you. You said you mentioned you also collect games from Super NES. So are there any particular games you like from that console, from that aside
Yeah,
from
I mean,
Sega? That is.
I think the Super Nintendo. I think the best games on the system are timeless. I think the top 20 games. It's easy to see why people love it so much because Super Mario World, Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Contra 3. Contra 3 is my favorite. I like a lot of violence in my games. I like to kill things.
Oh yeah.
So all them type of games are amazing, absolutely amazing, and I think they've stood the test of time incredibly. I'm a big fan of ActRaiser. I just played the ActRaiser remake.
Arc Razor.
ActRaiser, yes, yes. And even though the remake's not bad, I still prefer the original
I
Super
must admit,
Nintendo
I did
version.
try the ActRaiser remake on mobile, if I remember correctly, and it moved a little bit, well, actually much slower than what than what the original SNES one
Yeah.
felt like. So continue, Dan.
I think the Super Nintendo, it's got it's got a different appeal to the Genesis, isn't it? Really, the Genesis is more of an edgy type of console, which is why I can see. Like I say, if you like to be a bit different, that's what you like. But the Super Nintendo's got some fantastic games on it. Although I will say, I think the Mega Drive is very underrated by the mainstream now. I think these core Super Nintendo games are the be all and end all to a lot of gamers, whereas the Mega Drive has a vast array of like big diversity of games that people have never heard of that I like almost as much, if not as much as some.
Wearing things he did not tell us.
All right, very cool.
Any RPG game you played back in the days for the Super Nintendo? Because
Okay.
it's very popular back in the days.
Yeah. Right.
No.
I find right. I used to absolutely love the Final Fantasy games. 4, 5, and not actually. No, I'm not going to say 6. But I'm a weird one like this. I'm like yourself, mate. That I actually never really liked 6. I found it a real step backwards because I really liked the job system in Final Fantasy 5. And then when it disappeared for Final Fantasy 6, it just put me off it. So
you should have seen Sir Pau's facial expression when you said that.
Sorry, I knew it was going to upset someone. I knew it. Well, this might upset you more. I know this is going to upset somebody, but I used to love Chrono Trigger as a kid.
Chrono Trigger, yes.
Used to love it. Everybody worships Chrono Trigger. I can't play it anymore though. I think it's the way it's structured, and because it's quite easy, it's not remained one of my favorite RPGs. And I actually prefer the Sega Genesis for RPGs.
For Sega Genesis, personally speaking, my favorite RPG series is Phantasy Star on Sega Mega Drive. So Joe would know this exactly because I've always touted the Phantasy Star series as the pinnacle of RPGs on the Mega Drive. But anyway, continue, Joe.
All right. There are a lot more people coming into the chat. Sir Tres Natats there. Juan De Marcos, Sir Derek Konay, Ayan Bitangkol. Thank you, guys, for being here. Miss Kate Factor is also there at the chat. Sir Ray Vergel Espinosa joining us as well. Welcome, guys. Sir Gamitable joining in, and Mr. Page name required joining us in our Twitch page. So, it's I think it's fair to say that everyone here in the panel have their own fond memories of both Sega, Genesis, and Nintendo games in particular. So to piggyback with what Sir Siebert mentioned, so he already asked Sir Dan regarding his favorite Super Nintendo game. So let's jump the gun and let's discuss first our favorite fondest memories of Super Nintendo games. So let's start with Sir Siebert. Sir Siebert, anything you want to tell us about your gaming experience regarding Super Nintendo?
I did mention I'm a Sega. I'm a Sega fanboy. So the reason why I asked Mr. Dan Faulkner is because it's colored white. So I'm not sure if you. This is the Chrono Trigger. If you're familiar with the characters, so there's Frog, Ayla, anyway, Robo, and all that.
Luca. So it's a little bit blurry there, but we can pretty much discern the characters still. I think having some technical difficulties with the internet. Sorry about that, guys.
I apologize. I'm just having problems with the internet. Yeah.
Seabird is our
for
resident
now, I just want to share
customizer.
my Super Nintendo.
Yes,
So
he
that is his
he built
latest
custom-
modification.
he
Super
does
Nintendo, the
custom
Chrono Trigger
console.
version.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just having
So,
problems with the
any
internet.
games in particular with Super Nintendo, Sir Siebert?
What are you doing?
Well, I do have. It's not a good game, but it's one of those games I just pimped recently. It's the
I
Bard.
like it, mate. I
Ooh,
enjoy that.
well
It's a
now
tough
it's
game, but I
happening.
like it.
The
Oh, there you
Simpsons,
go.
Bart's
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 Nightmare.
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 There you go.
That's right. So maybe I'll just dig in. For now, I'll just show this at the moment.
So what can you
All
tell
right,
us
thank you
about
guys.
Bart's Nightmare? You already played it, you already finished it, Sir Stewart. So what can you tell us about Bart's Nightmare?
Well, it's a 2D platformer. So you're Bart's doing this. He has an assignment that he has to work on, and the pages kind of um, got flown out of the window. So I'm really
Ooh,
having a hard
Tagalog.
time translating myself. But anyway, it's a fun game. It's difficult. It's hard, but it can be fun to some.
Oh.
But this is actually my first
Or oh, I think he's breaking up.
the reason to
All right, up and he's back at the moment. All right,
Go on, move
let's
on.
proceed with Sir Ray. Sir Ray,
Well, Super Famicom, Super Nintendo. Actually, Super Famicom, Japan model to, di ba? So, fondest memories of the Nintendo's Power Rangers, you know?
Ooh.
is it the movie?
No,
You already used the movie?
fighting game edition.
The fighting game, the tournament
Yeah,
edition. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I remember.
Yun yung that was the first ever Nintendo game, Super Nintendo game that I ever played. So that's my fondest memory of aside of Super Mario. Yeah. Power Rangers. At the same time, halata naman na Power Ranger fanatic ako with this sword. So yun. So
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, yan yung pinapalabas ni Tito Joel. Wait. Yan, the
there
super
you go.
the Power Rangers Fighting Edition that was produced by Bandai. Yeah.
That's the second season, right?
Yeah.
Oh no,
The
yeah.
second season of Power Rangers actually. With Thunder Megazords on it. Yan.
Thunder
Thunder
Megazord.
Megazord, White Tiger Sword. Yan. And dito nilabas yung may hidden boss si Ivan Ooze. Dito 'yon. Dito sa game na 'to. So that's it. Power Ranger Fighting Edition.
Power Ranger Fighting Edition. Anything else aside from that game, Sir Ray?
Well, Super Mario Land. What
From Mario
else?
Land.
And the Mario Kart thing. Yan. Both
Isn't
are
Super Mario Land the game that introduced Yoshi?
yeah, the one that introduced Yoshi.
Yeah.
Right. Super Mario Land. All right.
Yeah.
So Super Mario Land and Power Rangers the Tournament Edition. So
Yeah.
what we're showing right here is this the Super Mario Land?
Uh, the SNES version.
Yes, this version. There you go. How about Sir Pao? Sir Pao, what can you tell us about your gaming experience regarding Super Nintendo?
Hmm? Well, I was introduced to Super Nintendo back when I was 6 during my 1 year stay in Cebu City, the Visayas region. And the Super Nintendo introduced me to the following characters. First, Ryu from Street Fighter 2, because that's the very first game I played in that system. And I got constant I got constantly defeated by Dalsim. I was never
Oh,
able
of
to
course.
get
Who
I was
doesn't?
never I was never able to move on from the first fight all throughout the 1 hour I was playing that game. And then after that, each and every Sunday, I always have this schoolmate of mine who plays Mortal Kombat with me and constantly defeats me as well. I never won one single match against that guy. But then it was a good memory, and that that was the start of me being in love with fighting games thanks to Super Nintendo.
All right.
Nice.
So, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter
Street
2.
Fighter 2.
Oh,
Yes.
fighting games. Anything? Any other genres from the system?
Hmm. Well, maybe a few years later, I was able to try Super Mario World,
Mm-hmm.
and then some other titles like the Final Fantasy 6
Of course.
and and Sir Dan's favorite Contra 3.
Nice.
Number three. There you go.
Yes.
And thank you for that, Sir Pao. How about Sir Joel? Sir Joel, what can you say about your gaming experience with the Super Nintendo? Oh,
Not as familiar. I'm not as familiar with the Super Nintendo because, like I said, during that era, I did what I after the after the Famicom, I was shopping around for which console I was going to be playing. I was looking at what everybody was playing, and I had this. I saw everybody had the Super Nintendo, and I went for the Sega Genesis. But I have to admit, there were times when I visited my cousin, who did have the Super Famicom slash Super Nintendo in their home, and I was able to play a few games there. One of my most favorite Super Nintendo games was Terranigma. It's part of the Soul
Oh,
Blazer series,
yeah.
Soul Blazer trilogy, if I remember correctly. And that one I really got into because of the fact that it had a. Well, I'm a story based kind of guy. Any game with a good story, no matter how bad the gameplay is, no matter how terrible it looks, as long as it's got a good story, I'm all over it. So in this case, Terranigma was that game that really drew me into the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo games. Terranigma was an action RPG, which actually goes completely against my grain because I'm a turn-based RPG guy. Joe would know this. I love turn-based RPGs, and unusually, Terranigma really drew me in right from the get-go because it grabbed you in terms of storyline from the beginning and just never let go all the way to the very end of it. Speaking of storylines, I absolutely also loved another Super NES game called Lufia and the Fortress of Doom.
Lufia.
Luffy and the Fortress of Doom. Sad to say, I wasn't the one that actually finished that one. It was my brother Eric Buckley, who went through it. I started off as when it comes to have four brother household. There's four of you, all guys. You start off one game, and before you know it, your brother's already halfway through the game, had picked up your game, and you just wonder why are you playing
Why
my
are you
game?
playing
My
my
save
game?
file, and and I just might as well. I decided I might as well just sit back and watch you play. And he went through it, he finished it, and I have to admit, Lufia and the Fortress of Doom was a really good game. And I guess it saved me the effort of having to finish it myself. So, and of course, the third game that I really got into for the for the Super Nintendo's Famicom was another very unknown game called The Fireman. I'm not sure if anybody at all
The
knows
fireman.
anything about
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I've played that one, mate. I've
You
played.
have, yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
that's got a Dan in it, innit? Dan and I can't remember the other guy. You two blokes, aren't you? And it's like a shoot 'em up.
And that's it. It's much like a shoot 'em up. And let me just bring up the footage of it if I can find it. The basic idea is you are two firemen. Of course, what do firemen do? Basically, they fight fires. Your missions comprise of rescuing people from a burning building. Your weapon is basically a portable fire hose. You go around buildings that are burning down, and you fight fires, which have very strange movements, shall we say? They move weirdly. They make different forms. When you shoot water at them, they disappear, and it's a lot of fun. It's not as deep as most other RPGs go. It's not really an RPG per se. It's more of an action puzzle strategy game hybrid, but it's pulse pounding, especially considering the fact that you know that and you are running out of time, as you can see from the upper left corner. You have a time limit there in trying to save the people that you're trying to save, trying to put out the fire of the building, and completing your objective. So that is again one of the more obscure games that I played on the Super Nintendo Japanese Famicom. Luckily enough, it was I found an English copy of it. I think it only came out in Europe, if I remember correctly, Dan. And I was lucky enough to have actually found it. I found a copy. It does have a sequel on the PlayStation, but it hasn't been translated into English just yet. Sometime in the future, if they translate the PlayStation One into the PlayStation One sequel into English, I'd love to get a crack at that. But right now, this game has fond memories for me in terms of the Super Nintendo Japanese Famicom. That's it.
So what we are showing here, guys, is the video game footage of the fireman for the Super Famicom Super Nintendo. So, Sir Joel, so the objective of the game is not necessarily taking out all of the fire.
No, your objective is like if somebody's trapped in the burning building, you fight your way through the fires to be able to rescue that person.
Right.
Generally, that's the flow of the game itself. Trying to, well, I mean, I guess you could try to put out all the fires within the time limit. That's a separate challenge in itself. But in 10 minutes, I don't think you'll be able to. The basic idea is if within 10 minutes you haven't rescued the person, they would probably die of suffocation from the fires, from the smoke coming from the fires. But that is that is the game that I really like to play. Weirdly enough, the fires move strangely. They just flow through the building and everything, and your fire hoses, portable fire hoses, have unlimited water. You take damage though, still. So because if you hit the fire, then you take damage. Of course, you can die going through the fires as well. So that's it. The Fireman on Super NES Japanese Famicom.
All
Wow.
right. Thank you for that, Sir Joel. No?
No worries.
So, uh, the fireman, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So
Mhm.
on my side, um, a little bit of background history, especially with Sir Dan. Um, in the Philippines, Sir Dan, not all of the households have the luxury to buy their own Sega or Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So most of us in the Philippines, we just go to our. We have our. So some households have their own Sega and Super Nintendo, so they tend to rent those out. So
Yeah.
they have a few. So they have a couple of Genesis, Mega Drives, a couple of Super Nintendos, and then they will rent those out to the neighboring kids. So that's most of our gaming history right there. And for all of us who can't really afford owning a system, that's the next best thing for us to play the games. So among with the Super Nintendo memories, the earliest ones that I could remember. So I have this neighbor who bought their Super Nintendo, a US Super Nintendo, and I played on those. I think the game that was bundled with their system was the Super Mario Kart, and we played the hell out of that game. I enjoyed it for what it was. It's not as cool as Road Fighter. Road Fighter for the original NES, but it was pretty fun. The Super Mario Kart, and out of all of the Super Mario Karts versions that we have, um, for every gaming system that Nintendo came up with, I still go with the original, the first one, Super Mario Kart. Yeah. Um, in regard to it, Super Nintendo, other games could be the Dragon Ball Budo 10. That's a tournament fighter, the one that has Majin Vegeta and Future Trunks as the unlockable character. Um, Gundam Wing, Endless Duel, of course, during the time when Gundam Wing was a hit back in the Philippines in the late '90s. I enjoyed that game as well. Yu Yu Hakusho, um, Yu Yu Hakusho as well. So more, mine's more on the fighting tournament side of Super Nintendo. I never really liked the Mario's and the Links for some reason. I just enjoyed the other games that Super Nintendo had to offer. Well, when whatever games were available back in the Philippines back in those days. And growing up, now that I had the resources to buy my own, just to prepare for this show, Sir Dan. Actually, I got my Super Nintendo right here, and then I tried to boot it up last night just to play a few games that I haven't, and then it's not turning on.
Oh,
So
you're joking.
it's not turning
Mm.
on, and so I checked a few forums and I checked some YouTube videos, and they said most likely the culprit is the fuse. And I don't have the tools to replace the fuse. I asked Sir Siebert. Siebert is our resident fixer upper around here. So I asked Siebert what would be the best possible solution, and he said it might have been the fuse. And I have my own multimeter. I tested the fuse. I'm getting zero, nothing, no charge at all. So most likely it's the fuse. Um, it's been a while since I booted that up. Actually, like more than 4 years now,
All right.
and I'm like I'm so confident that my NAS would at least be would stand the test of time, regardless whether I play it or not. I was that confident of its hardware capability, and then nothing. And I thought maybe I got maybe my TV is not compatible with it, and that's bullshit. I got my it's not the cords. I mean, I tried I got a universal cord that can go to GameCube to Super Nintendo, and it works fine with those. Not on the NES, the Super NES. And I'm like, oh shit, might have been the fuse. Yeah. Anyways, as I grew up, guys, so of course you know me. I'm an RPG kind of guy. So one of the games that I played and finished, of course, I'm gonna show it here. I got green screen.
Star
We
Ocean.
got Star
Star
Ocean,
Ocean,
the very
yeah.
first one.
Mm.
I got this one from Japan. Got this one from Japan on a bargain, and the original Chrono Trigger.
Mm. Yes.
For the Chrono Trigger, as Sir Dan mentioned, it's not if for every Sir Pao played this or Derek Pone played this. Guys, if you are going to play an RPG for the Super Nintendo, the easiest one that you can play would be Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing much going on for it. It's not that complicated, like Sir Dan mentioned, because of its simplistic gameplay. You're not really gonna get a good challenge out of it. It's more story driven rather than the gameplay itself. That's why there's a good cult following regarding Chrono Trigger, saying it's the best game for the for the Super Nintendo system. Yada yada, and yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, to each its own.
People have fond
There's
memories
a
of
certain
it,
appeal, isn't there, mate? I think you've touched on a key thing there, that the ease at which you can get into these games on Super Nintendo, Super Mario World, Link to the Past, and Chrono Trigger, is what makes it so appealing to so many people, because
Yeah.
the lack of challenge, which is not always a bad thing, you know what I mean, just makes it easily accessible for so many people.
That's
Well,
true.
somebody online once said the most favorite video game that you'll ever have for the rest of your life is the video game that you really got into when you were 11 years old. So it's like one of those things that it's nostalgia plus
Yeah.
what you first really got into hardcore. It's a lot of people really got into Chrono Trigger because, like you said, Dan, it's really easy to play.
Yeah.
It's very story driven. It's got multiple endings, so people have fond memories
Oh
of it.
shit! Endings.
I've gone through it maybe 2-3 times. It's really good, I have to admit.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not. I wouldn't really classify it as the absolute very best.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna get. I hear people getting their torches and pitchforks ready right now because of what I said. But as somebody who has gone through a lot of weird, strange, obscure, different games, it's a good game, but I can't really classify it as the absolute very best. I mean, Dan would know. I think you mentioned a little bit earlier in the pre-show portion that you are currently going through your library of
Yes, mate. Yes.
Sega Mega Drive games. Tell us a little bit about that one. Dan.
Yeah, I'm going through all the games I own at the minute, and I'm particularly focusing on the 16-bit era. I've played 260 so far. And
260, ladies and gentlemen, right there.
264 actually, just
264.
but I've tried to play them all to completion. Some of them are too poor to play to completion. But I've still got a lot more to go. But it's given me a really good perspective on, as you were talking about, games that I liked as a kid and why I liked them as a kid, and games that still hold up now. And that is the big difference I find when I'm reading a lot of online, especially mainstream journalists such as IGN, and doing the lists saying, "All right, this is the best game ever." Well, Chrono Trigger. When I was 15, it was fun. It was the best RPG ever. I loved it. Fantastic. Going back to it now, like I say, I just can't. It's the same thing. There's no Fantasy Star 4. Is one of my favorite RPGs of the era.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Fantasy Star 4. But it's got a challenge. It's got that. It is. There's certain battles that you can have in it that no matter how well equipped you are, or how well prepped you are, or how well you know the battles, the random elements that are thrown in there always keep you on your toes, and that's missing from Chrono Trigger for me. So.
The nice thing about Phantasy Star 4 also, if you play it after having gone through 1, 2, and 3, there's lots of callbacks to the previous games that you will realize Fantasy Star 4 basically ties out everything, and whatever comes after is basically icing on the cake. But yes, those games, if anybody is at all interested in alternative role-playing games, Joe, I know you're really into the RPG scene. That's what Dan and I would recommend, the Phantasy Star series, especially since we saw. This is a little beyond the discussion right now, but I streamed a little bit of Phantasy Star Generations for PS2. There's an English translation of that now. So the original Phantasy Star 1, Phantasy Star 2 have been reissued in the PlayStation 2 with English translations and brand new modernized graphics. So I think that's something that I'd recommend to you, Joe. But in terms of RPGs, yes, I completely agree with Dan. Chrono Trigger is really good, but I can't really say that it's the absolute best. And please put your pitchforks down, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very subjective opinion.
It's very
Everybody's entitled to them.
What else about Super Nintendo? Oh, of course. The first Tales of Fantasia, of course. You got it right here.
Oh yeah, the Tales games. Yes.
The first Tales of Fantasia. I don't
That's
know why.
I do love that series. As a series, I really love that, but I've not played that game yet. I've played all the later ones.
The very first Tales of Fantasia, ladies and gentlemen. And they only got the English translation when it was ported for the Game Boy Advance.
Oh, okay.
And then the PlayStation 1 also got... Actually, the PlayStation 1... So, Japanese for the for the Super Famicom. And then it was ported for the PlayStation 1, still in Japanese. And then they released the localized version of it for the Game Boy Advance. There you go. It was also mentioned earlier about, right there in the chat, Super Mario RPG. That's what happens when Square and the love child of Squaresoft and Nintendo, of course, you got their Super Mario RPG here. Actually, my brother played and finished this one. I just stood there and watched.
Proof that not all one night stands turn out to be bad experiences.
No. If anything, this is one of those. Nintendo and Square got really drunk one night, got freaky.
Yeah.
And this is what came out of it. People enjoyed it. I also got Magic Knight Ray Earth.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Most people are familiar with the anime of that one.
Magic Knight Ray Earth. Mm-hmm. One of the first isekai alternative world games or
Yeah.
anime
Mhm.
that was popularized.
Yeah, for all of
Um,
you anime fanatics right now, that isekai genre that you guys are crazy over, where people
Isekai.
get ported into different worlds, this is where it all
It's
started. Well,
this. It's
one
the
of the games
'90s,
that it
guys.
all
It's the
started.
'90s. Mm. Not that not the Sword Art Online crap that you got right now. No, 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 no. This is hardcore right here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Sir Joel mentioned earlier Terranigma.
Oh,
Terranigma, yes.
Terranigma for the Super Famicom. Now, Terranigma, as the panel mentioned, only came out for um, Japan and Europe. So, unfortunately, I'm not sure why they didn't make it for the US release. But as far as I can tell, because of poor sales, I think they only patched it through Japan and Europe and Japan and Europe only. Terranigma. When I when I heard of Terranigma at first, I checked it out. It kind of looks like Zelda, like Legend of Zelda at first. No, you don't have a party. You don't have a party with you. You're just adventuring alone. And like so, this is basically Zelda. What makes it so unique with the others out there? And the asking price of Paradigma, guys, as far as our RPGs for the Super Nintendo is concerned, it's one of the most expensive out there. Even the loose card, I got this out of a bargain. Not really a bargain. I haggled it with Facebook Marketplace. I only got it for 120 Australian dollars. And
wow.
compare it with the eBay prices that you have right now, that you're not even sure if those are even genuine or not. And Sir Dan, I was about to test this out, but of course, my Super Nintendo's not working.
Oh,
Disclaimer
You
to
know what?
everybody:
I,
Joe
I
is
should. You know what?
our
I should have tested. I should have tested this out
mm, this
the
disclaimer
first
to
time I
everybody:
got
Joe
it.
is our high roller in this group. So
Mm.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you should see his
So well,
collection. It
until I
it's just
get my Super
amazing.
Nintendo fix,
Mm.
um, hopefully it works. But I think it will. Hopefully. So that's it. As far as the Super Nintendo is concerned, those are all for me.
And
So
that's actually kind of why I'm very thankful for the modern era. The mini consoles that have come out recently, the Sega Genesis Mega Drive Mini, the Super Famicom Mini,
The mini. Yeah.
The Super Nintendo Mini. I'm also particularly thankful to companies that are coming out now, like Hyperkin. Hyperkin have modern versions of the consoles that are coming out that actually play the old cartridges. So your dilemma, Joe, that's happening right now, at least will not impact us as badly going forward
Yeah.
in terms of game preservation.
that's the downside of a hardware console collector. Or then
Yes.
it's the maintenance of it.
Let me ask you, Dan. Are you a hardware collector as well?
Um, my collection really, I've never been a focus collector.
Mm,
I just bought what I did at the time and kept it.
mm,
Really, I've never thrown anything away. I felt really well. I felt lucky. What I did is I didn't I didn't enjoy the initial transition to 3D. You know, when
okay.
so the N64, the PlayStation, that kind of era, I just didn't think the games played as well. Do you know what I mean? I bought the consoles, I bought the games.
Mm,
I found myself not really enjoying them. So I went out at that time
uh-huh.
and bought loads of 16-bit games, which is where I got my collection from because they're all cheap. Everybody were getting them really cheap, and for the next 5 years or so, I just kept on picking them up. I'm not a collector as such. I just have what
Whatever's there. All
over
right.
the years. You see,
And that's
So
cool. I mean,
it says
we all
right
have
here.
different backgrounds in terms of collecting. Continue, Joe.
Oh, so it says right there in the chat. So let's focus more on some of the other games that the chat members right there are suggesting. How about the Mother or Earthbound series? Any one of you guys familiar with that?
yeah, played that a few
What can you
times.
say about what's your experience with Earthbound series, or Dan?
Yeah, I like its originality. I love its quirkiness and its uniqueness. I think it's definitely worthy of some of the praise it gets for that. Gameplay wise, I think it's ropey. I have to be honest. I don't. I think it's that type of game that if I play it over a week or a few weeks, one night I'll put it on. I think, wow, I really enjoyed that, and then next night I'll put it on. I feel, oh god, get in.
There
You
are days like
know what I
that.
mean?
Yeah.
The big bugbear I have with it is its inventory system. It drives me nuts, the inventory system on it. But I think it's again, I think it's one of these that's become a greatest game of all time. When I can't say that personally, I think it's a good game, worthy a note, but it's not a favourite. But
One of the expensive as well.
it stands out definitely.
Well, also another thing, and that's I didn't have the problem back then, and that I do have now. Back then, you play a game, you pick it up, you leave it alone for 2 or 3 days because things pile up because of school, because of work, and everything, and you come back and you still have a good time. Nowadays, if I play a game and I put it down for a day or two, when I come back to it, it's like, what the hell was I doing? I mean, I'm 49 years old. What can I say? That's one of my dilemmas as an old
And
gamer.
you
Yeah.
see,
So,
what you're doing there is you're bringing me back to Fantasy Star 4 because
oh, okay.
that was obviously the first game where it kept track of what you were doing, and that
Yeah.
made such a big difference. You could put it, you put it down. It got the talk feature which said, right, what we're doing next, off you go, and that again over the years,
Mhm.
I must have played Fantasy Star 4 and finish it at least once a year, and that's one of the big reasons why. Because if I start it in February and I put it down in March and I don't pick it up till June, if you're a few clicks away from remembering what you were doing.
Well, let's ask Sir Pao. Sir Pao, what is your take on, like, I mean, particularly, choose one game that you absolutely loved during the Super NES era, and tell us what joy you felt going through it, or like what sorrow you felt in
Joy or sorrow?
realizing something about that game. Tell us a little bit.
Well, I'm not sure which era should I mention. Will it be the real era of the SNE of the Super Nintendo, or during these emulation days already,
Hmm.
wherein
Well, that's fine. That's fine. That
wherein
still
games
counts.
are
Everything
much more
counts.
accessible?
Everything counts in large amounts. Okay, continue.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
Just
I
Sorry,
like
I'm an
do,
me.
80s kid. What can I say?
yeah, but I do know that I enjoyed the Mortal Kombat game so much from the Super Nintendo, despite
Oh,
the fact that
There's no blood.
no blood
That
thing.
Mortal Kombat version is bloodless,
Yes.
so it looks like painless.
Hmm.
More sweat though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
it's more on sweat than blood.
you. What's
But
more gross, sweat or blood?
yeah, true.
Yeah. I'd
That's
rather
true.
go for blood. Sweat, you
Yeah.
just continue, Sir Pao. Continue.
So because of that love for the Mortal Kombat games, even though I constantly lose, I was able to follow through the entire Mortal Kombat series.
Oh.
When the second one came in, I was able to play that as well. Then the third, until they stopped at the third for the Super Nintendo, because the following releases were on the much
PlayStation 1.
advanced consoles, starting from PlayStation, Nintendo
And
64, and
64.
onwards. And I even own Mortal Kombat 11 for the PC, in memory of my love for that game.
Mm. So you can say, so you can probably say that because of your background in Mortal Kombat from the Super NES era, you're steeped in the lore. You kind of know who these characters are, what they do, why they do what they do, and things like that.
Yes, I was able to follow each character's storylines, even though their timeline is already
Convoluted.
like a multiverse thingy. They already applied the Marvel multiverse concept in Mortal Kombat. One timeline, another timeline Raiden from this timeline, Raiden from another timeline.
Nah,
It will be confusing if you were not able to follow the storylines.
nah. Christopher Lambert is still best Raiden. If you
Oh
ask me,
yeah,
Christopher
that
Lambert is
that's
still best
true.
Raiden.
Yes,
For the
definitely.
for the
Yeah.
movie,
There
even
can
though
only be
the
one
19 yeah,
Highlander.
even though the 1995 movie does not follow any of the original storylines of the
Still
game,
the best video game movie out there.
Oh yeah,
yes,
The
completely agree.
original
still
Completely agree on
movie.
that one.
Just
it's
about
still the
everything they have.
1995. It's still the
The
1995
95
version.
one.
Oh
Still the
yeah,
best.
absolutely.
Argue.
There was even a callback. I think there was a recent commercial where I think Mortal Kombat 11, I think Sir Pao came out
Yes.
and there was this guy playing and he says, "All right, let's play Mortal Kombat 11." And then he gets beaten up by the guy playing Raiden and he looks, "How are you so good at this?" And he looks to the side and it's Christopher Lambert playing and Christopher Lambert says, "Let's just say I have a history with this guy."
Oh, nice. And then
Brilliant.
you're gonna hear his husky voice.
Oh yeah,
talking.
absolutely. All right, cool. Back to you, Joe.
So before we head to the Sega Genesis side of things,
Mhm.
so let's ask Sir Dan because we've talked about the US side of the console wars between Nintendo and Sega back in the 90s. But nothing much has been publicized
Mhm.
or been told in regarding with the European side of things of the war because most of the because it's between Japan and America during the time. But how about the European side? So let's ask Sir Dan on your earliest memories, Sir Dan, back in your childhood during the 90s. What was the battle lines were like between the Sega fans and the Nintendo fans?
Well, I mean, the main battle lines were definitely drawn uh, during the 16-bit era of Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Um, I'd say the UK again. The thriving arcade scene in the UK is what probably made it more of a Sega fertile area. Certainly, again, with myself, we all wanted to play the games in the arcades on the home system. And when you had Afterburner, Space Harrier, Hang On, all the Super Scalers, and all those type of games, Shinobi, come onto the Master System, it were the Nintendo Entertainment System wasn't really that relevant at the time. It was around. People had the NES, but certainly where I grew up, it was small fry compared to the Master System. What shook it all up was the Super Nintendo landing, because the Super Nintendo landed and it blew everybody's socks off. It really did. I mean, the Sega Genesis was still old on its own, but suddenly it had some genuine, real competition, and I have to say, the two games that really made the Super Nintendo's arrival prominent where I lived in the UK, in the middle of England, was Super Mario World, obviously, because like we said, it was so easy to get into, and what made Super Mario World so great is all the good-looking women who couldn't play or didn't play computer games could suddenly play Super Mario World. So we all got a Super Nintendo to get these girls around and say, you can play this if you want. So that was also a big boost. But the other game, which was a real, I mean, looking back now with reflection, it's not really that good a port, but at the time, it were massive, and that was Final Fight. Again, because of that arcade background, so Final Fight was massive in the UK. It was you suddenly got an arcade machine where you were playing as the big bruisers. Hagar was a big hulking bad boy, and it looked like
Final Fight was awesome. Yeah.
it looked like a boss.
Oh shit! I forgot Final Fight. Yeah.
You were
Yeah, I
suddenly
mean,
playing
it was muscular Freddie Mercury. What can I say?
So say again, mate.
It was muscle bound Freddie Mercury. What can I say?
Well,
I know. It just kind of looked like it, but what can I say? It just Dan's related experience kind of just gave me a little bit of a flashback about how things were back in the arcades back then, about how you knew it was, pardon the expression, a sausage fest. what can I say? It was all guys. It was all dudes. You knew who was where and what.
Yeah.
And the moment that a girl walked in, it just heads turned. Like, what is she doing here?
Get over
And
it. Get over it.
is she gonna play? Is she somebody's girlfriend or something? And it just you could
You
feel
instantly
the
change.
atmosphere was palpable. It would change really. I mean, was that experience familiar to you, Dan? Was that
Yeah,
something
oh,
that-
definitely, mate. Definitely. And what Sir Power was saying about Mortal Kombat and those type of games, you play with friends, and it became a genuine competition to impress these girls. You get these girls round, and you know they'd be playing Super Mario, and then you put Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat on. You weren't playing just to beat your friend. You were playing to show off, and
You were playing
that's
to
what
impress.
you did.
That's true.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And if and a lot of the time, and one of the things this is probably I shouldn't say this, but one of the things I used to love when we used to play on the fighting games, and it used to spill over to real life. So you'd like say you'd be trying to impress a girl, and your friend would beat her on Mortal Kombat. So you'd punch him. You'd say, "What you doing? I'm trying to," you know what I mean? And that to me, when you're talking about the beauty of the actual era itself, that was the beauty of the era, because gaming was as much a social thing as it was a solitary thing. You know, I'd spend all day on my Genesis with friends playing Streets of Rage and Mortal Kombat and those types of games, and then at night I'd still, you know, I'd pop whatever on Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy, you know what I mean, Fantasy Star 2, 4, whatever it were. So it were, as an overall eclectic, it were a beautiful time for games, really.
It like you said, it was very social back then, and because the internet really didn't exist back then, so you really had to interact with the people that you knew had the same console as you back then. So you had to seek out your clique. You had to talk. Hey, have you played this? Have you tried that? Have you found this secret? Things like that. So that was the atmosphere back then, and you know, in a way, it still exists now. Thank goodness for the internet somehow, but times were much more innocent way back when.
Yeah.
All right, we have Siebert back with us. All right, Siebert, how about you? Everything all right on your side?
I think it's okay now. So
All right, cool.
I really apologize, because there are times here in the Philippines where I'm at that the internet's really bad.
It's flaky, I have to admit.
Especially during the weekend.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think I miss a lot. I was mentioning something about the Super NES, but scrap that. There are just a few games I played on the Super NES. So I did some Super Mario back in the days, but my true love is with Sega. So
Well, we might as well get into it then. Siebert,
Yes.
tell us about your Sega experiences.
there's a lot, because back then, when you say Nintendo, the thing that comes in mind is like kiddie games, Super Mario. So we had
all right,
lots of...
the pitchforks. Come on, guys, put them all down again. Okay?
No, I have to be honest, because Sega really did good with their advertisement that Genesis does with Nintendo, and so they're mocking Nintendo back in the days, and they're really good at it. So we were one of those kids who was highly influenced by those bullying of Sega back in the days. So so I'm not really into that.
We call propaganda. The Sega propaganda. We ate it.
But it was highly effective propaganda. Yeah,
That's
why
not bullying. We call it propaganda.
That's why the console wars were huge. And I'm thinking maybe Dan over in England, the people over there were kind of looking at the States and Japan back then, and we're kind of thinking, what the heck are those Yanks doing or something?
I like the language, mate. I like it. Yeah, we were actually, I'll be honest, the UK and myself, big time, really loved Japanese culture. Really loved Japanese culture. If I get a poster or something for my games room, always the Japanese one. The artwork, without a doubt. Not just I think the artwork's better in general, but just the Japanese writing is just so cool. You know what I mean? And that whole culture thing. So, but looking at the propaganda side of things, it were just fun, weren't it? It was just real fun on both sides. I do think Sega nailed that. I think they were very cheeky, and I think they were
It's
very
during the MTV, the advent of MTV, very counterculture.
yes, yeah.
So
right.
more teen oriented kind of marketing because of the idea that the players who played with the original Famicom, with the original NES, they grew up, and to market with these kind of gamers, so we tend to we go with their demographic. So let's go with edgy, push the envelope as far as we could until the parents got involved, the Senate got involved, which begs the question to Sir Dan. Um, we've noticed, especially with the gaming communities, up until now, the European side always gets the last releases of games, unless it's an international release. Europe always gets the last of of the release dates. So
Yeah, things get delayed over in
right,
Europe.
Yeah.
and as far as so on your personal side of things, Sir Dan, um, going back, especially during the 16-bit era, where Nintendo and Sega would release their games a little bit too. Will go with Japan first, and then localize to the US, and then going back, and then that's the only time they would go to Europe.
Mhm.
On the UK side, do you have any idea why this kind of trend is still happening?
Why it's still happening now?
Why is that kind of still happening now? I mean, do you have a special censorship that
Yeah.
well, Japan has their own, US have their own, so before we release it here, we tend to look at it first before we release
Joe
it
would
in
know
Europe,
about
something
censorship
like
over in
that.
Australia. Over in Australia, things are extremely tough over there, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. Like,
I mean,
right, Joe?
is that something? Is it something that kind of thing? That's why you got so late releases over there in the UK?
I think it's just more market based. To be honest, mate, I think it's I think they really just wait to see what will sell. Definitely in the
No,
16-bit era, we were deprived of a lot of RPGs.
that's true.
RPGs weren't seen as viable in the UK. You know, what I mean, they weren't a you know, again, it were all an arcades-based market, so we did get the RPGs, but they were
Not all of them.
delayed.
Mhm.
I mean,
Uh,
Japan will get all of them, of course, because they are the masters of the genre, and then some will be localized to the US. But every once in a while, UK will get the scraps for some reason.
Yeah, it's a strange. I mean, I think obviously, see, the translation's a practical obstacle that they have to overcome. And I remember, like I was speaking to Eric Wahlberg about it, and he were basically saying that the effort that had to go in the 16-bit era to translate some of these games was quite substantial, and that effort, was it worth that effort? You know, when they had to pay staff time and you know, they looked at him basically say, look, if we're going to translate this massive bulking RPG into English for the UK market, because even if they've done it for the American market, there's still a lot of specialized language that they still might have to go back and tweak.
Yeah.
And game systems and all the mechanics and that I might have to tweak. And sometimes I think they just if it didn't particularly sell well in America, they might think, well, we're not going to bother releasing it in the UK then, especially if it needs further additional tweaks. I think it did. Wahlberg spoke about one game in particular, and it was for the Saturn actually. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah, for the Saturn, and I can't remember which game it was. But he said that they released it in the UK. He said it had an American translation that was kind of 70% done. Then they did an extra 10% for the UK market, and the reviews slated it because they said it made sense for 2/3, and then it made no sense whatsoever for the last portion of the game. And it's that type of thing that the pride they didn't want to they wanted to avoid that happening with a lot of their games. And that, and he said that that was one game in particular that really cemented his belief in that, because what's the point? People were loving it, and then they didn't get the money's worth by end on it. So yeah, I think it's just a marketing thing, really, Chief.
Is it because during the 90s, the video game market in the UK, they tend to underestimate the gaming community of the UK compared to the US and compared to Japan and the US? That's why we'll just have to wait, see how it goes before we release a game.
I think
Is
there's
it something like
definitely
that?
there's definitely an element to that, definitely, mate. When you look at the one of the systems that I don't know if you, even if you're that aware of it, but we had a system called the ZX Spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, over in the UK, and that was massive. That was a really big system, and so a lot of people still saw that kind of market as the main market. A lot of executives and stoots who weren't actually involved in the gaming industry and looking from the outside in would be saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get a game out for the ZX Spectrum," and us gamers would be thinking, it's a dead platform, mate. What you messing about that? But that's how it went. I guess again, it's that executive level decision making. So
No, I just want to add as well to what Dan had mentioned a while ago, because in the UK, guys, if you look at how the prices are marketed, prices in the UK are more expensive in terms of games from Genesis. Since they're on PAL region, there are different regions ever since. So there's PAL for the guys from the UK, NTSC for US and for Japanese. So it's actually different here, Dan, because I remember I posted I posted a game in your group, Sega Genesis. It's bare knuckle.
Yeah.
ah,
Yeah.
All right.
I mentioned
We're
that.
getting the second territory now, guys. All right, go.
That's right. I honestly swear I got this for $4, and everyone was like saying, You're full of,
You're
you're
full
full
of
of,
shit.
Yeah.
You're full of crap. Bullshit.
guys here in the Philippines. Dan, you
It's
can get
really
this
cheap.
really cheap, $2. This is
Not
original.
anymore.
it's unbelievable,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
But if you look at price
But
charting,
during the
I,
time that
I would.
Hubert got it, he got it for cheap. There you go.
No, no, no. I just got this recently online.
Oh,
In
really?
Yeah,
Oh.
I
exactly.
remember seeing the post. I remember seeing the post. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I'll
Oh,
tag you on that.
to add
So
to that, Sir Seabird, sorry. I
mhm.
found in Marketplace Bernacle 1, Bernacle 2, and Bernacle 3, and some Sonic 2 and Sonic 3. And the seller is just selling it for under $120 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
So if you're going to divide that, that's still a good bargain.
Yeah, yeah.
This is $200. Just the card. This is a loose card, and price charting is valuing this at $200.
Crazy, isn't it?
Just imagine. And I got it for a couple of dollars, for $4. So
Is it
All right,
genuine,
Hubert.
bro?
You
Is
can
it
come on
genuine?
over here,
Is
sell
it
that, and then
genuine?
retire. Cool.
Is it the real deal? Or maybe it's just a clone. Is it a
oh no,
clone?
it's not.
No,
It's
okay.
not a
Yeah,
clone. So
yeah.
Oh, there you
I
go.
have to tag you on that group. It's with Sir Dan's group, Sega International. So
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, I apologize to Siebert for having interrupted him earlier. But yeah, Siebert, I'm curious a little bit more about to find out a little bit more about your Sega Genesis obsession from the earliest days.
yeah, I actually have some mirror games. So I actually finished Kid Chameleon.
Kid
So
Hey,
Chameleon. Ah.
Kid
I'm
Chameleon.
pretty sure you're familiar with that game. So it's one
tough
of the
game,
hardest
tough
game.
game.
It's one of the most brutal game that's ever created. So because most developers back in the days, they're how do you say this in English? Sadistic. So when they're creating their games, so they try to torture the kids who plays their games, and Kid Chameleon is actually one of them. So if you're gonna be playing Kid Chameleon, if you're familiar with that game in on a Genesis, it's impossible for you to actually play it because it took me a week So good thing we have this PS3 Sega Genesis port. So it helped me save the game so I could progress. So it's 102 levels. So it's really impossible for I find it really impossible for kids to actually finish that game using just the Genesis. Have you tried it then?
Yes, mate. I think it's a tough game.
It is.
It is one that I don't think I've finished it, to be honest, mate. I'm more of a I'm more of a shoot 'em up man. That's my more speciality. I'm a Hellfire man myself.
Yeah.
But platformers I struggle with a little bit, and that's one of them definitely.
So one of those sadistic games is RoboCop and Terminator. So this
Oh.
game is really hard. So if the final boss, it takes you around almost an hour to beat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not kidding you guys. If you play this game, be ready for the final boss because it's gonna take you like an hour. I'm not really sure why developers are doing this, but
You know what? There was supposed to be a movie about RoboCop versus Terminator, but it never really. No studio wanted to do it.
Well, I
On
did read
paper, it
the
sounded good, but for some reason, it just never flew.
well, I did read the graphic novel. It was written by Frank Miller, if I remember
Frank
correctly.
Millar, yeah.
That was a really good graphic novel, I have to admit.
I mean, they could make it now. I mean, we have the
They could.
technology for it.
there's a big chance they played the game, so they scrapped the movie.
The game's if the game doesn't look good, what if you make the movie, right?
That's right.
Mhm.
So I'm proud to actually own one of the rarest game on the Genesis. So it's
McDonald's.
McDonald's.
Ah,
McDonald's
have you
So
heard
Treasure
of
Land
this?
Adventure. All
Have you
right.
heard of this?
yeah,
McDonald's
I-
game.
it's it's a short game actually, but it's for me personally. I'm not sure with Dan, but I find this pretty rare.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I have it complete in box.
Is
So
it good?
there's still it's a good game.
Wow.
So
All
it's a
right.
platformer. It plays like Sega,
Mhm.
and graphics is colorful. It's good, but the story is short. So it's a short game. It's really expensive. So, but it's one very rare to have. So
Nice.
I'm glad to have this. So one of the sadistic games I played aside from Kid
Logistic.
Coming In, yeah, is Taz. Taz Escape from
Escape
Mars.
From
Ooh.
Mars.
So
That's one of them that I've thrown out of my system many a time. Many a time. That's one of them.
that's
Oh, one of them.
crazy. Yeah,
So yes.
there's
Yes.
actually a lot of them. So Lion King, there's Captain
Lion King.
America, and
Captain
Jurassic
America.
Park. Actually, there's one game that
Ooh.
I'm really having a hard time playing. It's from my Sega CD. It says Batman. So
Oh, the Tim Burton Batman. Oh fuck.
Mhm.
yeah, it's Sega CD. So it's hard. So I'm still playing it. I'm
It's
having a
hard
hard.
because the controls are shit.
Yeah,
As
it
with a
is.
lot of Batman games in the past, the
Yeah.
controls are well terrible.
It is.
Just to be straight up, a lot of Batman games in the past had terrible controls. About the only exceptions were the NES one was the NES one, the Japanese Famicom one. But
There
yeah,
you go.
And it's really
And
hard to play it with this one.
okay.
so
It's
what
hard.
Saber is
It,
showing
it
there is his CDX, Sega CDX,
Sega
Sega
CDX. Yes,
CDX.
that's right.
that can play
So
Genesis games and Sega CD games, except for the 32X. Unfortunately, would have been all in
There
That
one.
is
you go.
beautiful. That is beautiful.
Siebert is showing off his customized
White
Sega Mega Drive 2 with
for
his
white.
CD-ROM, all in white,
That is
gold,
just
and red.
gorgeous, mate. That is absolute. That paint job is
Did you
fantastic.
posted that in the on the Facebook group?
I did. I did. You know
What
how
what
much
what
I
what?
got
what?
this then? I got this for like in dollars, just around $8.
Oh, he's joking. That's a
No,
bargain, mate.
seriously. I got this for $8, but it was it's flooded, so there are rust all over it. So I know some restoring, a little bit of restoring, so I was able to make it into something priceless.
That
So
is beautiful, mate. Yeah, I will
that's
recommend
right. The good thing about it had power. So
We kept saying, Sir Dan, that if Siebert didn't mention that he restored it, you would be fooled that Sega released an actual
Yeah.
white Sega Genesis, right?
oh, thank you guys.
Yeah, it's a fantastic job. I think I've asked you to repost it a few times, haven't I? Because I was really impressed when I saw it. I thought, yeah, and a lot of people ask similar kind of things. Where do you get that? And I'm like, sorry, boys, custom job, Steve. Go see him.
Yeah, they can actually message me. I can make one for them. It's just the shipping that's very costly
You can make
from
for
the
Sir Dan if
Philippines.
you want.
And my favorite handheld, it's
The Game
the
Gear.
the
It was
Game
the
Gear. So it's one of my favorite. So I've played a lot of games from the Game Gear. Sonic 2 is one of the hardest games on the Game Gear, and I finished that. So I have games from Japanese because I understand Japanese, as Sir Dan mentioned, that they're more attracted to Japanese games. So, and I believe it's more expensive there than, right?
Yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
game,
yeah.
but it's actually the opposite here.
All right.
So we're into US games, so that's more expensive from where we're at.
Yeah.
So US and UK games, so some UK games. So it's actually different here. So we Japanese games, cards, Famicom, Sega. It's just you can see it all over marketplace. So this one, they can't believe it's bare knuckle 3. I got it for $4. No one believed me in Sega group. So it's around $200. But anyway, I have a few box collection mapping.
And Sailor
Familiar with
Moon.
this Sailor Moon, Dan?
And Sailor Moon.
Yeah, Sailor Moon. Yeah.
Man,
You and the missus are gonna get
They know
along
Sailor
famously
Moon
with that
and the
one.
Seven Balls.
that's right.
Seabird, you and the missus are gonna get along famously with that one because she is the ultimate
Moon.
Sailor Moon fanatic. She devours
Oh,
anything Sailor Moon.
on our next podcast, I'm making a Sailor Moon.
Nice, very
Show
cool.
that to you guys. So I have an extra uh, Game Gear lying around, so might as well pimp it into a Sailor Moon.
All right.
All right, so you better be prepared for me to bid on it because of the fact that the missus sees it, she's gonna want it. All right, Seabird, get ready for that one. And let me just have let's just do a little very quick shout out to the people in the chats right now. We'd like to say thank you for being there, Miss Heather Maxwell, and to Mr. Marlon Hurtado Eliscupides, Mr. Juan de Marcos, JDM, Juan de Marcos of 123 Go. Also, 123 Go with 3 O's right there on twitch.tv. And of course, let's not forget Mr. RJ Hutchin. And let's see who else is.
Sir Carlo is there joining us in the chat.
Oh, let's not forget Derek Bonai. Very good, Derek. It's nice to see you here as well. So, Mr. Clark Plambiano as well, very much. And Mel Jolnir with Stanley. Also, if I remember correctly, he is his appellation is Mr. Mel Bryan. All right, back to you, Joe.
How about Sir Pao? Going to Sir Pao.
Mhm.
What's your gaming experience relating the Sega Genesis side of things?
Actually, before Sir Pao starts speaking,
Sure.
Dan and I were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier. The fact that there have been, as Siebert showed it a little bit earlier, Sega Genesis compilations for the past platforms: PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, PlayStation Portable, and now, if I remember correctly, on Steam platform. So, Sir Pao, I highly recommend, if you are interested at all in catching up to your Sega Genesis backlog or the games that you have never played before, pick up one of the Sega Genesis compilations that are available. Highly recommended. Also on Steam, if I remember correctly, the Nintendo Switch also had one, right, Dan?
Yeah, it's got one, and you could also get. I think there's quite a few on the Switch that are not on those compilations, if I'm correct.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Well, let's go back to Sir Pao. Sir Pao, I you did mention that your main background was in Super NES, but
Yes.
what are the few Sega Genesis or Mega Drive experiences that you've had, if you have any?
Well, I the actual Genesis I was only able to play it once, and the game that I was able to play with it was Sega's mascot Sonic.
Mm,
Just
nice.
just one
That's a
Sonic
given.
game, and that's it. The next time I was able to play any Genesis game was already in the emulation era, so I would love to try those offers that you have shown to me
Mm.
regarding those Sega Genesis compilations, if ever they're available on Switch or any other system. So it was the Genesis memories for me is more on the emulation days already, since like I mentioned, I was only able to touch a genuine Sega Genesis once in my life, like when I think I was 9 or 10. So s- fast forward to that time, I was amazed on some titles from the Genesis also being available on the Nintendo,
Mm.
seeing their differences. Some are superior, some are not. Then at the time at that time I was somewhat hooked to to the much superior versions. I tried it for quite some time, and then that that's that's pretty much it. For more more of the knowledge I know regarding the differences of the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis were, well, thanks to YouTube, thanks to some review videos that I love to watch during my free time.
Actually, that's a really good suggestion, Sir Pao. That might be a good topic for a future episode, Sir Joe. Certain games that have the exact same games in different platforms, like Sega Genesis or Super NES, like Aladdin. They're very different, both on Sega Genesis and on Super NES.
Same name, different
Shadowrun,
gameplay.
Yes.
Shadowrun also
yeah, yeah,
had Super NES and Genesis versions which were vastly different from each
yeah.
other.
Alien 3 and ones like that. Yeah, yeah,
There you go. Also, maybe the Uncharted series by Koei, or the Romance of the Three Kingdoms series. They have their differences in both platforms. It's a suggestion, Joe. Something that we can tackle sometime in the future.
Well, we can.
I would
But yeah, sir. Thanks to Sir Pao for the idea
Yeah,
on that.
I would love to go back to one topic that you discussed earlier, because I completely agree to what Sir Dan mentioned, that it was because of marketing reasons that versions of US, Japan, and Europe have such
Difference.
differences. We can I was actually thinking earlier of the favorite game, the Super Contra for, or should I say the Contra 3 for the Super Nintendo. If I am right, Sir Dan, it was called Super Probotector in Europe.
perfect example, mate. Yes, yeah. Not only was it
What?
called
Why?
Super Probotector, but because they were afraid of violence and such like I say, I like it because it's a violent game. And when I first got it, I actually had a Super Famicom, not a Super NES. I had the Japanese version.
I see.
But on the UK release, they changed the humans to robots to
Mhm.
try and make it more child friendly. So you're not killing human beings, or you're not getting killed as a human being. You're killing a robot. So technically, it's not meant to be as violent. I don't get that, but that's what they were thinking, and that's
Is it because of history? I think, Sir Joel, if I'm correct, is it because of the Iran Contras? Because during the 80s there was a war back in the Middle East where where the U.S. were for some reason supporting the Iran Contras, and just because it's Contra,
Oh
it kind of
yeah, sure. Turn
it kind of
to the
insinuates
oldest man on the
that
panel for
this
history
game's
lessons. Why don't
yeah
you
the
go
game's
ahead?
pushing in the narrative of the
Yeah, I think it
the
might have
Contras
been.
of
It
the
might
war.
have something to do with that. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to do my research on that as well. But I would not be surprised actually, because the Iran Contra incident was kind of big news back then, way
Right.
back in way back in the 80s, going into the 90s, and it's uh I would not be surprised if it had some impact in the decision on naming it.
Yeah, because I'm not sure
Naming from
if the
Contra.
war came first or the game was
Mm.
released first.
Yeah, the Iran Contra incident happened in the late 80s and during the Reagan era, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah, during the
And
Reagan era.
the Contra series started happening
Was it Reagan or Bush?
for the Sega Genesis roughly
I see.
around the same time. So I would not be surprised if it had a little bit of impact in the naming of it, instead of Contra into Pro Protector, which is
and not
still, if it's aimed at kids, it's still vaguely lewd. But if you ask me, but I
and,
could be wrong on that one.
and it's
Pro
not just
Robot
name
Protector. Pro
Pro
Protector.
Robot Protector, Pro
Thank you, Sir
Protector.
Carlo.
Yeah,
and it's
Call
not
it.
just
as
What
the
we
name of
Ricardo
call it.
Nave would say.
it's not
Yes.
just the name of the game itself, but even the main characters. Imagine replacing Bill Reiser and Lance Bean as robots.
Yes, there's also that.
Oh.
Mhm.
Can we have a video game footage of that just to see the difference? Survey is doing during our during the is doing our moderating at the moment.
Mm.
Yes, sir. Sir Pao, you were saying.
I mean, it
Continue.
would make sense. Huh? Why would humans have 30 lives, right? So they would be
There we
robot
go.
weapons. Mhm.
Hey, why have three lives? Three lives
Yeah,
is
3 lives.
it's not questionable, but 30 is all right.
Should have made them cats and give them 9 lives.
That's true. Yes, Sir Pao. Continue. Continue with your what you were saying, Sir Pao.
Well, that was just it. I was just able to speak out regarding that earlier topic that I wasn't able to share then. As I mentioned earlier, the memories of
More of a
my
censorship.
memories of
It's more
my
of a
memories
censorship.
of yeah, more of censorship maybe, and then the memories of my Genesis games. Then that's it. It's more on the emulation times.
Mm. Well, that not to say that emulated experiences are any less valid. I mean, we're all still having fun. We're all still enjoying what we've got, and the experiences are what matters. So that's my personal take on it. It's something that Sir Pao is going to be experiencing going forward with our recommendations, right? Dan, with the Sonic Genesis Ultimate Collection and
Yeah,
Seabird
yeah.
as
I
well.
mean,
So yeah, all right, Sir Pao, I'll
Ed just
sponsor you a
mentioned that
copy.
one. As Ed
Oh,
just
please.
mentioned that, and she mentioned Golden Axe in the
Oh,
messages,
Golden Axe, yes.
and
Ooh,
it's
nice.
it's
Yeah.
it's series like what we're talking about the us getting the imports. We obviously without emulation,
Mm.
I wouldn't have played Golden Axe 3 for
Oh
years.
yeah, 3. Mhm.
You know what I mean? There we are. Is that 2? I can't see, mate. 2, yeah.
Yes,
That's
Heather
Golden
Maxwell
Axe.
says Golden Axe classic. Yes. Mm.
So
Wow.
it's they're all of them are on that compilation CD that you mentioned, Chief, and it's just crazy when you think we didn't get some of these games in the UK. You know, how can you not have Golden Axe 3 released in
Mhm.
the UK? It's nuts, but that's what
You
Golden
they are.
didn't get Golden Axe.
Not 3. We got
Three?
Golden Axe, got 1 and 2, but we didn't get Golden Axe 3.
Any
Mhm.
particular reason why?
I,
Probably for sales, because a lot of people actually look down on Golden Axe 3 as the redheaded stepchild of the series, shall we say?
yeah.
Right?
Actually, Golden Axe 3 was just released in Japan.
Oh, was
So
it?
there's
Okay.
there was
We
no
didn't get it.
US or UK counterpart. Yes.
No.
That's
Okay.
why out of the 3 series, Golden Axe 3 is the most expensive. Not this one. This is
Okay.
2.
And
So, anyway,
I found it amazing that we didn't get that because Golden Axe was a big hit over here, a massive
Mm.
hit. So
Was it?
there weren't. I can understand it with certain games, like some of the more obscure RPGs. I can understand the marketing thinking, oh, that might be a risk.
Mm.
Golden Axe 3,
You don't need any translation for that. You just beat beat the guys that comes at you. That's it.
Some
Exactly.
panther comes up and slices you in two. You know, that's
Exactly.
that's
You
right
just
there.
beat them up. That's it. I mean,
Mhm.
do you need any story for that?
Oh, Miss Heather Maxwell is bringing up one of my favorite Sega Genesis
Shinobi.
games, the Shinobi series.
Shinobi.
That's
Hated
a
that game.
really good series. Yes.
So is
Crazy
that
hard.
that's got to be
Shinobi. Sh-
I think it's the most underrated series ever.
Agree.
How many, Shinobi in the arcade, which is considerably different, if not based on the same for the Master System.
Yes.
Revenge of Shinobi, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Shinobi 3, Game
Shinobi
Gear
3.
Shinobi, Shadow
Mm.
Dancer. There's not a bad game there. They're all
No,
amazing.
not a single one. They're all amazing. They're all excellent. I have to agree
They're
with
just
that
hard.
one. Well, I also credit Shinobi with my with having introduced me to the Sega Mega Drive Genesis. Like I said, during the time when I was shopping around for something to play after the Japanese Famicom NES, I walked into a store, saw what everybody was playing, which is the Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, and I saw the Sega Genesis Mega Drive being shown on the side with Revenge of Shinobi as a showcase, and I was thinking, my goodness, this is cool. This is
Mate,
amazing. The
was
Revenge of
it-
Shinobi looks awesome, and I pulled all of my money that I saved throughout, and I bought the Sega Genesis Mega Drive just on the strength of Revenge of Shinobi.
Mate, I can that
That's
intro. So that is one of my favorite Genesis memories. Where
Yes.
I did exactly the same. I got the I would get in. I'd ordered the Mega Drive anyway, but it will literally plug it in. Watch that intro where he jumps down with the lightning and that, and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like, "What have I just witnessed? This has just totally blown me away completely."
It was a quantum leap from the 8-bit NES era. When you saw that intro with the lightning and the shuriken being thrown at you and him deflecting it with his sword, you could say this is the next generation already.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. I mean, you look at today's consoles, and there's not that leap. There's I'm not saying they're not good at what they do,
Mhm.
but that was a moment. That would definitely in my gaming life. Watching that intro of Revenge of Shinobi for the first time,
Yes.
like you've nailed it, mate. When you just said that was welcome to this generation, and because it was it also coincided with the turn the 90s. That were like welcome to the 90s. Welcome to this era.
Yes. Although we have a little message from Mr. Derek Ponay in the chats that will have the pitchforks being risen up again. Shinobi is greater
Shinobi
than
greater than
Gaiden.
Ninja
Okay.
Gaiden.
That is, Mr. Derek Ponay, you might have
Uh,
touched off a war again. There you go. All right, back to you, Joe. Continue.
in regarding with the Sega Genesis stuff, so as I mentioned before, so then we're just renting those out, and with the Sega, so there was this time when my aunt, as a birthday gift to us, so we went to Evergotesco, um, um, to this mall, and she gave us an opportunity to choose either the Nintendo Super Nintendo or the or the Sega Mega Drive, right? And one of the games that were on display was Yu Yu Hakusho, Ghost Fighter, for all of you guys back in the 90s, and just because of that game alone, we chose the Mega Drive instead. And so that was the first game that we owned for the Sega Mega Drive. Played it lots, loved it, and um, at the time when we were still renting it, when we were renting out the Genesis and Mega Drive, um, one of the games that came out of it, of course, Altered Beast.
Yeah.
How can you not play that? Altered Beast, Golden Axe, 1, 2. The first two, of course. Love those games. I always choose the girl. I always choose the girl to play with. I just like her magic more. she's the fire elemental, right?
Yeah, you got the dragon.
She has the dragon, badass.
Yeah.
And Streets of Rage, Bare Knuckle, 1, 2, and 3. Of course, I will always choose Blaze.
I'm seeing
I
a
would
pattern
always-
here, mate. I'm seeing a pattern.
I just like doing the high kicks for some reason. It's the high kicks. Just push A and then just push and charge your A and then release, and she'll do a high kick. Just for no
I think I
reason.
know that. I think I know that certain reason.
We are
Only
men
in
of
Japan,
culture.
guys. Only in
We are
Japan.
men of culture.
Only in the bare knuckle, not in the Street of Rage. I think they got rid of the. I think they got rid of that. What else? For all of you guys who are not aware, panty lines. Okay.
Mhm.
What else about Sega Genesis? Shit, there are a lot. Contra. What is this? Contra 3 or 4?
Hard corpse, Contra Hard
Hard corpse.
Yeah, there you go. Loved the game as well. I will always die during the first boss. You know, the one with the big eye. Will always
No,
do it like this.
Those are one of the most brutal games that you could play on the Genesis. Contra.
I always die at at that particular boss, and if I'm lucky, then I'll proceed with the next stage. And oh, Sir Dan, so we are paying this. We are paying for the hour. So let's just for example, 20 Philippine peso will grant you like an hour of gameplay.
Right.
And then there's a timer, of course, and then once your time's up, then the next one will the next player will come in.
Do,
And
do you have
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, Dan?
Mhm.
Back in the days, in
I
your-
doubt it.
Rentals.
Yeah,
Rentals.
rentals. I'm not sure
Rentals.
was a big thing. Was anything? Was something that happened back in the UK? Was it something?
It happened, but it come in quite late. It probably I can't remember. I can't remember rentals being popular until the mid 90s, really. 94 at the earliest, maybe 93.
It's video game prostitution, basically. you're you're paying you're paying
All right,
Genesis.
ladies and gentlemen,
You're
this
paying,
show has just officially
you're
turned
paying
PG.
you're paying
Okay.
Genesis for an hour of
Yeah.
bliss.
Yeah.
Super
And
Nintendo, you're paying just for an hour.
due to Joe's turn of phrase, this show has now just turned PG. Okay, but
No.
honestly, Joe is correct on that one. Microtransactions is just the modern word for what we used to do way back when,
Yeah.
like
Only the
plunking down
Philippines are
coins
that.
into the arcade, paying for 1 hour's worth of rental time for your favorite console. That's something that normally happened in the Philippines, and
Especially for me who haven't owned any of them.
there you
If you
go.
don't,
That,
if you don't have
there's
any
South-
of them, Sir Dan, that's the
Yeah.
next best thing.
Mhm.
So for the lack of a better word, it is video game console prostitution.
Yeah, no,
For the lack of a better word, I'm sorry, guys.
For the lack of a
Um,
better word. Yes.
What else? What else was there for the Sega Genesis? I mean, there were lots of games that were released for the Sega Genesis and for the Mega Drive, but back then in the Philippines, you would only get what's the mainstream of things. What's the most popular? Back in the day, these owners will just get what's trending.
Yeah.
What games were actually more popular, and then
It made
we'll
sense
buy
because
those
it's
games,
what
we'll
made money.
import those games, and then we'll let the players here decide whether to play it or
Mhm.
not. So out of the obscure ones that you guys know, most likely we haven't heard of it
Mhm.
until lately.
that's
Now
true.
that we have the emulation technology, it's a lot more accessible to
Yes.
those obscure titles that we don't know.
Mhm.
Fantasy
But-
Star being one of those things. Fantasy Star 1 came out for the Master System at first. The Master System was not a big thing back in the Philippines. It's just the Famicom.
Super fan, yeah.
It's a Famicom, the NES guys. So if you're and even if you got a Famicom, you're not going to play Final Fantasy in Japanese because you're gonna read all of those Japanese texts. So RPGs in the Philippines are not really that it's not really that popular unless of course you're just gonna breeze all through that and just go with the gameplay and just hopefully you'll be able to finish it and without understanding any of the story. With Fantasy Star 2, 3, and 4, 2, 3, and 4, at least on the Genesis and the Mega Drive side, that's their answer with Final Fantasy. So that's their mainstay JRPG.
Yes.
And then you got the Shining series, of course.
Yes.
Shining
The
World.
Shining series is their answer to the action adventure RPG.
Now,
Right.
more like the
Actually,
tactical strategy ones,
Right.
like their answer to the Tactics Ogre
Tactics
saga, I
Ogre.
guess. Yeah, because of the fact that the Shining series, were tactical strat games, like like
I
the
think that's
first
their answer
square
to Fire
movie and
Emblem.
everything like that. Notable exception would be Shining in the Darkness, if I
Shining in the
remember
Darkness.
correctly. Shining in the Darkness being an RPG first person dungeon crawl, much in the same vein as if anybody's familiar with the Eye of the Beholder series on PC. It's a lot like that. You basically first person, you move through the dungeon, moving left and right, opening treasure chests, things like that. So, but then again, yes, the Shining series were more of the tactical strat games, which I have to admit I'm terrible I'm
What else?
I'm
We
only starting
got.
to learn that myself.
Um, I also played Terminator, Judgment Day.
Mhm.
I only got to the first stage because it was.
Was that the shooter one?
Yeah, the shooter one.
Oh, that was great
Okay,
in the arcades. That was
guys,
amazing.
with the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo games, it's either the game is hard or you just suck. I think it's the latter for me. I just suck
And
at it.
there's people like me who are both. The game is hard and I suck.
We just suck at it, no. So for the first Terminator, the Terminator shooting up game, I only got to the first stage, rage quit, and then stopped at it, and then the first two X-Men games that came out for the Genesis,
Clone
the
Wars
one
was good.
with the one with the one with which one has the Sentinel? Master Mold. Is it the first one?
Uh, I believe it's the Clone War.
The clone one. Is that the one with Gambit?
Yeah.
I believe
So
so.
there,
Yeah. I'm not.
the way I differentiate the two is the one with Gambit and the other one with Nightcrawler.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
So I'm
Or
getting confused here.
the ones with the cards. That not really cards, but
You on about the
cutscenes.
Arcade's Revenge? You on about the
There you
Arcade?
go.
Arcade's
Yeah,
Revenge?
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That is a tough
Um,
game. I love that game, but a lot of people hate it because it is
Um,
brutal. It's one of those that you have to do the work as a kid
yeah.
to learn the level layouts because it's so you have to take a lot of leaps of faith and
How
just
would you know to select the stage? I mean, you're in the danger room, and then there's these panels here, and
Mm.
no one knows what's that supposed to be unless you're supposed to go to that particular panel, then press select. Press the select button, and then you'll able to go to the stage. And if I remember correctly, it's just those panels. I mean, it doesn't really explain which panel goes where, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're gonna play for the first time and like, okay, what do I do here?
Yeah, I mean, developers
You're
back in
doing
the 80s
nothing.
and 90s had a very, as Siebert said, had a very sadistic streak to them.
Yeah.
It would be more, screw you, figure it out.
Right?
I mean, to be fair, so I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's a very in the UK very famous games journalist called Julian Rignall, or his name is Jazz Rignall. He helped start out IGN when that
Oh.
got going. Yeah,
Mm.
and his background was reviewing games, Amiga, all that, and then he moved on to the consoles, Genesis, Master System, etc. And he actually interviewed Sega and he spoke to Sega, and they actually had a few people who made a considered effort to balance the difficulty better for the home ports of the arcade machines, because, like you say, they were very sadistic, and a lot, especially on the arcade principle was first level easy enough so you could get into it. Second
Yes.
level, test them a bit. Third level, take the money.
No.
Basically,
Yeah,
it
take the money,
ramps
take the
up.
money, take the money. And all, if you notice, there's a lot of Sega, and this is one of the big reasons I love what they've done with Sega Genesis is a lot of those home ports get that that difficulty rebalanced. So it's not quite as brutal. It's still brutal, but not as bad. But they also added all the extra, extra additions to games like Golden Axe. You got extra levels.
Yes.
Gauntlet, you got a quest mode as well as the original arcade mode. Mercs, you got another mode. So that I think that showed to me that team that worked for Sega at that time really were putting an effort in to try and be the best, and that competition with Nintendo really fueled that. You know what I mean? That's why we got so good games, really.
And just to add on that, if you look at the games that was made back in the day, so there's a thing about console war with regards to having the same game on two different ports. So there's Aladdin on the Genesis, and there's Aladdin on the Super Nintendo. Because some of the games that was released back in the days, they're not typically the same.
Yeah.
So some people they have the Super NES version, and they're thinking that no, I don't need to get an Aladdin on the Genesis because it's basically the same, but it's not. So the same goes with the Genesis having a port on the Game Gear. So they are two different. They have the same title, but the gameplay is different.
Yeah.
So guys,
two different
if you have a
animals to the
Game
same
Gear,
game.
if you have a Game Gear title on the Genesis, they're different. You might as well give it a shot on playing both games, not just on Super NES, on the Game Gear, on the Genesis, because
Highly recommended you also
they
do
play
that.
differently.
Like Siebert says, get Shadowrun both on SNES and Genesis. Both are excellent games on their own right. Both have great gameplay, great storylines, completely different animals, both different from each other.
And
Shadowrun.
I just wanted to, because Sir Pal mentioned something about a while ago when he mentioned something about that he just played on emulation and all that, because it actually depends on because we grew up with this genre. So I believe Sir Pao grew up playing PlayStation and all that, but as kids we grew up with Super Famicom, Sega Genesis. So it's actually one of the reason why, because kids nowadays they wouldn't understand the passion that we had, the difficulty, the passion that we had, the reminiscing is very nostalgic for us to actually go back and play these games, because games nowadays are very much realistic. So if you have a kid who's playing Fortnite, and you introduce them with games that we grew up, I doubt if they'd appreciate it. So there are some, but yeah.
I think that's
but
that's a key thing. I've not got kids myself, but a lot of my friends have got kids, and I've got I've either acquired or built or whatever emulation systems from basically just cheap PCs, really cheap PCs.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see what games they like, because like you've now and then, a lot of them they haven't got the patience for.
That's a very good question. What do they gravitate towards? You've had experience observing kids checking out emulation and classic systems. Let me ask you, what do kids nowadays gravitate towards in terms of retro systems, if you've seen them happen?
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's similar trends there. I think what we touched on earlier, easier games to get into. So Super Mario, they all love Super Mario World. Yeah, I mean, they all my kids, my mates' kids that I've sorted them out love that, but they all love beat 'em ups, and they all love Streets of Rage. And one of the guys that you messaged earlier, Punisher, they all love Punisher, and I think it's just the simple. I don't, so many games now, you need to spend 2 hours learning the systems before you learn the game. And it's the simple, I've picked something up, I'm shooting something, or I pick something up and I'm hitting somebody, and it's that easiness of accessibility that they seem to. They still like all the all the Xbox and the PS5 games, but they're less prepared. Seem less prepared to give older games time. We have to read manuals and one of my favorite games on the Sega Genesis is the Immortal.
The Immortal, yeah, that's a good one.
It took me a year to learn it. Do you know what I mean? It took me a year to get off the first level. Do you know what I mean? It's just so brutal.
Seriously.
The isometric perspective did not help at all.
I finished it for the first time 2 years ago. 28 years after the first time I'm playing it. Do you know what I mean? And I was determined not to use a guide. I'd like not use the guide for 15 years. I'm like, I'm not going to use the guide. I'm going to do it myself. And it is, not doing it without a guide. It would just, flipping out. So kids aren't,
that's an interesting challenge. Sure, Pao, I'd like to watch you stream the Immortal for Sega Genesis. I'd like to see I'd like to see you do one of your streams on. Actually, that's a really good idea, Sir Pao. Let's dedicate your
title of the game again.
Sega Genesis
The Immortal
games in your streams.
Yeah.
The Immortal.
If Sir
Okay.
Dan
Okay,
just imagine Sir Dan finishing the first level for 1 year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're gonna, good luck with your stream. If you're gonna,
Well,
you're gonna be playing that.
I'm gonna try. Why not?
But then again, yeah, that's a really good insight, actually, Dan. The fact that kids will still gravitate to simple but fun gameplay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what system it is. It doesn't matter what era, as long as it captures their interest visually and mechanically, shall we say. It
That I agree.
will keep their interest and it will keep them going. So things like the Punisher series, Super Mario, maybe Battletoads. Let's see if the kids are gonna go into Battletoads.
That I agree, Sir Joel, and my
Yeah.
5-year-old nephew is the living proof of that.
Oh, there you go. What is he playing right now?
Well, he wants to try he saw me playing Super Mario 3 last night, and he wants to try it.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Brilliant.
Very cool. Nice.
Don't let them play Battletoads. I'm pretty sure they're gonna hate it. That's really difficult.
If we
game.
suffered through this, they suffered through
They
it.
can
too.
suffer through it.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the reason why the Mario games are kids game. So that's what I meant when I said that a while ago. Because when you say Super Nintendo, that's one of the things that pops into mind. Mario. So
Golden Axe is one of the one when I do a kids system for a friend. That's one I always make sure I put on there because that again is a really easy game. It's easy to get into. For people who like playing as women with nice books and bums and whatnot, it's got all that on it. So yeah, it's when I do the kids systems, I bear that in mind. I do put a few tough ones on there to give them a taste of it, but I don't. Well, I mean, I put them on there, but I kind of make sure that they know all about the easier ones, and they're the ones that I'm thinking on the Streets of Rage, the Golden Axes. I mean, there's to be fair, even Ghouls and Ghosts, the Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and the Ghouls and Ghosts series, they're tough to complete, but they're easy to get into.
Yes. Oh, and for Golden Axe, put two kids together, two different controllers, and show them the fact that they can beat each other up.
Exactly.
That's also kind of an experience. Hey, I can beat up my partner. Very cool.
Noted.
They might see it as a cute game, but I doubt if they're gonna appreciate it. Like Ghost.
All right,
All right,
so we
Joe,
still got a few more. I think we still got a few more minutes before we end the show. Guys, how weird was it to play Street Fighter 2 on a Sega Genesis controller with only 3 buttons? How weird was that?
I didn't even try.
I mean, without using the six button ones.
The 6 button.
You're only gonna use the original 3 button layout ones. How weird was it to play Street Fighter 2?
I was quite lucky with that.
It's hard.
I got
Really hard.
Well, I got the Super Nintendo version first, and I was actually really I thought the version was fantastic, but I was really disappointed how badly the shoulder buttons. It just you were essentially playing with 4 buttons. No one really used them shoulder buttons much. You couldn't. Yeah, they would just start to pull a special move off with them. It would just hard. So I actually waited until the 6-button one were released because I wanted that made my mind. I thought, oh, if I want it properly. And there were rumors of it coming out and whatnot. And it's to me, it's the best way to play it. Playing with a 3-button is just no.
Just no.
Because
I didn't even try.
the
You're
way
about to say,
you
Hubert.
the way you play Street Fighter on a Genesis is that when you press the start button, it
It changes.
it changes from kick to punch.
Yeah, but
So
ain't nobody got time for that.
so you really have to be fast. So if you're doing the Hadouken and all that, and you have to switch and do the
The hurricane kick.
the shuriken kick, yes. So it was fun. I have to be honest. So it's fun in a way that you tend to be busy with the controller. So, and that's a good thing about Genesis because it's really tough. It's not like the controllers nowadays that the more you use like the PlayStation or the PS3 controllers. The Genesis, even if you use it almost every time, it's a tough controller. So if you're playing fighting games on a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4, they tend to wore out. So but on a Genesis, it's a tough.
Hey,
I
things
I
were
will
built
ask
to
one more
last back then.
I will ask one more question to Sir Dan. Oh, guys, there in the chat, if you got some questions, we'll be able to accommodate at least one or two. Especially if you guys have a questions specifically to Sir Dan, we'll be able to accommodate those. Sir Dan, so during the 16-bit console wars, what was the common medium on how games are being advertised? Especially in the UK, do you got magazines or because there's no internet back in the day, so all we have is just TV advertisements and magazines. Does the UK had their own?
Yeah. We had the big magazine that I was into and that most of the UK were into was Mean Machines, and the guy I spoke about earlier, Julian Rignall, he was the editor for him. CMVG, Computer and Video Games. They was
Computer and video games, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, and they were they were massive basically, and they all every so many pages you got all your adverts. The TV ad side of things didn't really gain major momentum until about 91, 92. But we also had the show Gamers Master.
Games Master, I've heard of that. I still have to see a few episodes of it though.
Yeah, it was based. We had another one called Bad Attitude, but that was really crap. And that was,
Okay.
most gamers just took the piss out of it. Most gamers thought that was but there, we got advertising mainly magazines, and then it took off after that.
It's like, yeah, and back in the US, if I remember, I've seen a few episodes. I didn't grow up here actually. I grew up in the Philippines, but I immigrated here. Coming over here, I saw some television stations, particularly G4 TV, if I remember correctly,
G4.
showing a few episodes of the classic show Starcade, where they would show competitions of arcade machines and everything. So I saw a lot of Sega games there as well, and the Computer Chronicles by Stuart Chaffee, if I remember correctly. Those had a few segments also on video games. But yeah, in the United States, it really popped off with the console wars. And like I said, to Dan, I imagine you guys over in the UK were kind of looking over in the US and Japan and wondering, all right, you guys just duke it out. We're just going to reap the benefits afterwards. You know?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But I think, like I say, it was that the culture over here because it was so arcade based. It even that advertising wise were, you get adverts for arcade machines in console magazines. Do you know what I mean? So it with that type, and then it all fed into each other. You know what I mean? You saw something in an arcade, you wanted it for your console, etc., etc.
Yes.
So what it was, from my point of view, it always seemed like there was a good arcade scene in Japan, not
Mhm.
so much in the US. It seemed like the US was more Nintendo based and
Yeah.
home game based.
Mhm.
But that was only, that was just as a kid looking from the outside, really.
Yeah. All right, and we have a little bit of a message here from Mr. Juan de Marcos on the chat, which I completely agree with. Children of all ages, let's all suffer together. Come on, suffering builds character, you
That's
guys.
it.
All right,
You,
Joe,
you
back to
gotta
you.
you gotta have the
Oh, sorry,
passion
Seabird, go
to
ahead.
play our
what,
games.
what would you chaps say then? On each system, then let's name your hardest, your own personal hardest experiences for each system.
Let's see. All right, Seabird, you go first.
The one I played recently, for me, is the hardest. Kid Chameleon on the Genesis.
Mm,
So it's hard for me because it takes like quite some time to actually finish. So it took me a week thanks to the PS3 port. So
mm,
again, I find it difficult to actually use that on a Genesis.
mm,
And there are actually a lot of games I played that's really difficult. So it was normal for games back then to be difficult. So but those are just actually some of them. So RoboCop versus Terminator, Kid Chameleon, and because one of the thing that's hard for us actually it's because we don't have the internet.
mm.
Uh, Nowadays, if you are having problems with a stage, you can just go YouTube and just check it, and no one's gonna know that you cheated. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but back in the days, so you're just uh, playing all the moves, the strategy, and it's all just your effort into playing it that makes you succeed in accomplishing the story of whatever game you're playing.
Spot on, mate.
All right, now let's proceed with Sir Pao. Sir Pao, we know that your background is mostly in Super NES. What was your hardest, Super Nintendo or Super Famicom? What was your hardest experience in whatever game that you played with in that era was?
Hmm. Let's see. I guess that quicksand level in Contra 3.
Quicksand level in
The
Contra
The
fourth
3.
quicksand,
stage. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
fourth stage.
You spin right, you can't stop
Yeah,
spinning.
yeah. You're spinning right round, baby, right round until you get vertigo for spinning in that stage.
Come on, we're all 80s kids here. You guys would know, you guys would know the references. There you go. All right, excellent, excellent. Let's see. For me, personally, on the system, I would say hardest game on the Super NES wasn't so much hard because it was hard to play. I mean, the mechanics were hard. It was hard because I really wanted to play it well, but I just couldn't because of the hardware limitations. It was a little game called Civilization for
Oh,
the
it's
Super
yeah.
NES. It's that game. I'm a huge Civ fan. If anybody knows one thing about me, I'm a huge Civilization fan, and I will play it on any platform. If it shows up on mobile, if it shows up on tabletop, a board game, I'll play Civilization. If it shows up on the PC, I'll play it. It showed up on the Super NES, and I think it was designed for the mouse interface for the Super NES,
Super
keyboard and
Nintendo
Yeah.
mouse,
mouse.
and it was really hard to play with just the joystick controller, the
It's one and
joypad or
click.
whatever, because you had to move the cursor ever so slowly from one point to the next one, and you still had to figure out where you could jump the cursor. I knew the mechanics of Civilization. I knew how to play it, but it was just so hard to play. But I still wanted to play it. So that's the hardest level is from the mechanics of the machine and the game itself, not so much the game proper.
Mhm.
There you go. Our Ruben Jose Chavez Sr. says, Civ, nothing like having Greeks or Romans in ancient times with the WMD, weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, and all they got back then is just a catapult and the battering ram.
Battering ram.
There you go.
Those
Well,
are
like I said,
those were the weapons of mass destruction back then.
like I
Oh,
said
if you
in
got
my
punch
recent
explosion, of course.
in my recent short video review that Joe actually posted on the Pinoy Retro Gaming official page, only in Civilization can you see a knight on horseback one hit killing a Sherman tank, and and you get the thrill of battle from it.
With a wooden spear.
There you go. That one knight that you completely forgot to upgrade a few years back, right there, suddenly comes charging at that Sherman tank, makes it blow up
Cheap
with one shot.
aluminum metal right there.
Oh, cool. And as for the Sega Genesis, one of my hardest games to play is I would say F-22 Interceptor. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that
Love
one.
it, love it, mate. Yeah.
It's a plane simulator, and because of the fact that it ran almost purely on polygons, it was one of the earlier fully polygon based games, and it was a flight sim where you would take out enemies from air and ground. It was a little hard to play because of the fact that the Sega Genesis kind of struggled to run it, so you kind of had to think about 2 or 3 seconds in advance before you pulled the trigger for you to be able to hit whatever target you were going. So again, it's more of a mechanics thing, but I absolutely love that game, F-22 Interceptor. So there, sometimes I guess you can say that I'm a glutton for punishment. What can I say? All right, and Joe.
Quick shout out to Mr. Ruben Jose Chavez Sr. Sir Ruben, the topic for the night is Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis games. With me, like I said earlier, guys, it's either the game is just either the games were just designed hard, or I was designed dumb. Sometimes both. Okay, as a dumb kid back then. Okay, for the Sega Genesis, they're frustrating, yes, but sometimes it's either they're playable, but it's a matter of you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, because there's no walkthroughs back then. There's no magazines that at the time. There's no internet to explain what to do, what to do on certain games. The one thing that stood out pretty much as I was racking my brain for the Sega Genesis, it would go with MiG 29. MiG 29, it's a flying simulation. It's a plane simulation as well, aircraft simulation, where you're controlling a MiG 29 post Cold War Soviet Union jet plane, and you're battling out other jets and other plane carriers during the post Cold War. And it's not like Sky Destroyer. Like if you just stood up there, if you just lay still, enemies will come flying right at you. With MiG 29, it's just everything's just blue. Where do you go? Like if the sky's blue, the sea is blue. It's there you go up, there you go down. You just fly around looking for some. I just don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Am I supposed to look for something, or am I supposed to shoot something? I just can't. What else? Sonic, of course. I always stop at the casino stage. Oh, this is Sonic 2, guys. So I always stop at the casino stage. Green Hill Zone, it's pretty much it's pretty linear. When you reach the casino stage, all right, it's all lights and sounds and all that, good visually stunning, right? But it just got so frantic. Like what's the best I just don't know how to advance to the next stage. And even if I got lucky, I don't know how I did it the first time. I just let Sonic run as fast as I could, just bounce wherever he goes, and then one thing will happen. Next one thing will lead to another, and then I'm just fighting the boss. And I'm like, how the hell did I got here? You know, and if I die, I don't
That's
know how to do it again, right? Um, anyway, for the Super Nintendo, um, Turtles in Time.
All right, right.
Turtles in Time only because it was a little bit difficult for me because um,
You're playing
there are no saves, there's no save states, there's no code for you to have extra lives. If you run out of lives and if you run out of continues, you go way back.
Mhm.
And this was the time of the first time I played Turtles in Time was during the rental days, and even with the emulation right now, well, I can do save states, sure, but I don't want to do that. I mean, what stops me on keep playing Turtles in Time in finishing Turtles in Times that I only played it if I'm waiting, like if there's a big if I'm waiting um with a bit with a long line, and I'll just grab my phone or my Vita or my PSP. I'll just play Turtles in Time there, and then
If the missus is shopping for clothes and
right
coals or
or
something,
yeah, right. You just find a corner, sit down quietly, let the missus do her thing, and you're just
Yeah,
sitting there,
exactly. There should be a
and once we're
dad corner
done,
in department
yeah,
stores.
and once we're done with our and once I'm done with my thing, I just put it aside. I don't really tend to finish it.
Mm.
Like I don't really just
Mm.
find a good time just to sit
Click
one
on it,
just
yeah,
sit
yeah.
and just play the hell out of it. No, I only just play it for just to pass
Hmm.
the time,
Bits and bobs, yeah, yeah.
right? And yeah, that's it for me. As top of my head, there's a question here with Sir Derek. Oh, question: have anyone ever used the mode button from the Genesis controllers? What the hell is that mode button for?
I mean, I personally never have.
Nope, me either.
Mm-mm.
Me either,
I
mate.
personally never have. Mm-mm.
Nah.
All right.
Was there a mode button? In the
Oh,
first place?
see?
See, there
Yeah,
you go.
there is a mode button. I think it's right in the smack down in the middle.
Mhm.
Um,
It's one of
okay.
those things that you completely ignored so much that it just became one of the things that your eyes just never saw anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe
All
it's
right.
just for the 6 button controller. I did see the 3 button controller, and there's no mode button in
It's
there.
either select
Oh,
or start.
oh, there you go. Okay.
I think the mode button is just for the six
Yeah,
button
six
ones.
buttons.
Could be.
Most,
Yeah,
mo-
that's true.
more
That's true.
probably.
If there are no more questions, guys, let's proceed with the closing remarks.
Mhm.
We'll do Sir Dan last. Sir Pao, closing remarks in regarding with the NES Sega Genesis
Hmm.
and where they can find you.
Oh, so well, as mentioned all throughout this episode, I am more of a Nintendo. I am more of a Nintendo guy, but it would be fun not only for me but for all of us if we could try both. We could see their differences, and the best part of it, let's just enjoy the game, and let's let's all suffer if it's difficult, and let's have fun if it's easy for us. This is Sir
Yes.
this is Sir Pau. You can find me on Twitch, Sir_Pau_24, YouTube, Sir Pau Gaming Channel, and Facebook, Sir Pau. Streaming every afternoon or evening, depending on my condition after the night shift work.
All
Yes.
right. How about Sir Siebert? Closing remarks and where they can find you, Sir Siebert.
You know what? I really feel bad right now because I missed most of the topics or the parts. I can't believe my internet would act up now. Now that we have Dan on our stream, but
It's his topic,
apologize,
guys.
guys.
Actually, it's his topic.
But yeah,
He
we're
did
just
He
happy that you're
suggested
here.
this topic.
Back
All right.
in,
I was
we're happy that
supposed
you're
to be
here.
ready for this, but
Mm.
internet did not cooperate with me. So
No
Well,
worries,
it
no worries. The
it
fact
happens.
is, we're just happy you're
Yeah,
still
we
here.
did in the
It's
end,
always
no
a good time
problem.
when Seabird joins us.
That's
That's it.
right.
All right,
So
continue.
you know what? One of the things I noticed with the games that we had back then is they are all really expensive nowadays. So you can compare them. It's twice the price of some of the games that we have right now, some of the newer games. So if you're into that mentality of actually venturing to the games that we had back then, be prepared because they are really, if you're into collecting, that is, but you can always emulate. So I grew up playing Sega, so I there's less that I could talk about the Super NES, unless it's Mario. But yeah, and you can actually see me on well, we're part of the RPG gaming group, so you can actually catch us with the PlayStation 2 group with Celso Claudio and Sega Collectors Philippines under Andrew Koa. And I post from time to time with my collection from Sir Dan's group, Sega Genesis group. So whenever we have acquired new collections, we actually post them and share it to fellow enthusiasts. Thank you, guys.
All right. How about Sir Joel? Closing remarks, sir, and your where they can find you.
All right, closing remarks regarding the Sega Genesis Mega Drive versus the the Super NES Famicom dichotomy, shall we say? Mm, like Sir Pao says, enjoy what you've got. Try out everything. The fun is the main thing for whatever you play. Sure, a little bit of friendly banter and a little bit of friendly competition is adds to the experience of Genesis versus SNES. That's perfectly fine, but at the very end, the fun is what we are after. And of course, it also helps out if you put yourself in the mindset of somebody who was actually there during the time playing the game. You might playing the games of that era might be a little bit archaic, but if you give it a try, if you give it a chance and put your mindset as the same as a kid during the era experiencing for the first time, with the understanding that they were working with what they had with whatever limitations there were, it's an amazing experience, really. I am the Pinoy Gamer Abroad of the Banyagan Native Facebook gaming channel, part of Pinoy Retro Gaming Network, also on the twitch.tv, streaming under the name Banyagan Native, which means in our native language, person who is of native origin but residing in a foreign land right now. That is me, the Banyagan Native. Back to you, Joe.
All right. With my closing remarks, guys, um, with the the console wars that we have now is just what PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo, PC, sure, right, and
And
I can
handheld
only
games,
Handheld games,
and
yeah.
the
As
handhelds,
past
right, and
episodes of
mobile
handheld
gaming,
machines, too.
right.
mobile gaming, yeah.
And if Twitter was a thing back in the '90s, what kind of a console war
Oof.
what kind of a
If
console war
Twitter
would we
was a
get?
thing back in
What
the
we'll
90s,
get,
there would have been
right?
World War III back then.
if if the Sega fanboys and the Nintendo fanboys went at it,
Mm.
if the internet was a thing, if Twitter, social media was a thing back in the '90s, but it's part of the fun. If anything, the console wars of the '90s did brought gaming in the mainstream, worldwide. Yes, there might be some discrepancies in regarding with releases, as Sir Dan mentioned specifically in regarding with the UK. But it's safe to say that whether you're a Sega boy or a Nintendo guy, uh, we enjoyed what we got, and these memories that we have right now made possible with the emulation that with the emulation technology. So if for all of you guys who have missed out during those days, if you can really afford it to buy your own system, your own Genesis, your own Mega Drive, your own Super Famicom, your own Super Nintendo, that's fine. That's why we got the emulation right now. So there's no really an excuse for it to not to play your favorite games back then. legalities legalities.
Well, there's
Uh,
perfectly legal ways of emulating games nowadays. Like I mentioned, like the Sega
so
Genesis Ultimate
um,
Collection, compilations on the Switch, the mini consoles and everything. Well,
there are
there's
ways
many
around it,
avenues.
guys.
There's many avenues. Yes.
And we're also I'm advertising once again the retro gamers collectors of the Philippines, especially to our international to our non-Filipino audience that we got right there. Especially with Sir Dan, you can also check retro gamers collectors of the Philippines. You might surprise yourself on what you'll find, whether it's
Mm.
consoles, games, peripherals, accessories. We got it all
Oh,
for
for
you.
you.
All right. Before we end, though,
Right.
I'd like to hear Dan's closing remarks
Sir
on
Dan.
the subject. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it, chaps. Listening to you guys and getting all these different views from different viewpoints. It's been brilliant.
Mhm.
I want to echo your sentiments about emulation. Whilst we like to collect and we like to own the hard copies, play the games, enjoy the games. You know what I mean? If that means you've got to emulate, get
Mhm.
emulating.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, we've there's a lot of games that we've not even talked about that are some of my favourites on both systems.
Mm.
Biometal on the Super Nintendo, Atomic Runner, Afterburner 2, Forgotten Worlds, all these fantastic games. And I think,
Star Fox.
yeah, yeah, mate. I think what
Kirby.
worries me a bit is when I see a lot of the mainstream gaming media, and it kind of limits what they perceive as the best games on these systems to quite a few. And there's
Hidden gems.
so many more out there, so many more out there. So just indulge and try and get past those first few difficult tries, and you will be rewarded. Like I say, you will. There's plenty of games out there that if you persist with, I still play retro gaming more than I do the modern gaming, and the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Sega Genesis is my favorite machine, and Super Nintendo is not far off, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, just enjoy it for how you can.
Oh, where can they find you, sir?
Oh yeah, come and I'm just come and join us at the Sega Genesis Facebook group. We feel free. We talk about Sega Genesis. I can't allow too much other stuff in there just because some of the locals would get a bit riled. But come in and share your memories, see what games everybody's playing and that, and have a laugh as well. We're there to post a few daft memes, and we love friendly banter with Nintendo people. We absolutely we love
Friendly.
it. Our system's better than your system. We keep it friendly, obviously, but yeah, it's all good fun. And to be fair, I think that's one of the things that made that era. I think that console war pushed friendly, good, healthy competition, and gave us these fantastic games that we've got.
Excellent. Excellent.
It was
Uh,
friendly for the gamers.
mm.
Not for,
Well, no, it weren't.
not for the people who are involved. All right. Thank you for that, Sir Dan. And that's a wrap, guys. Again, for the chat. Thank you so much, guys, for staying for the show. We may have went over time, but that's fine. I mean, it was a great show. I mean, like Sir Dan said, we have not even touched the surface of the games for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. There's quite a lot. All that we have mentioned is what just the popular ones, really,
Yeah.
not including the hidden gems and the pretty obscure ones. And
Mm.
hopefully we'll be
That's
able to
right.
tackle more of those in the future episodes. No, and thanks again to everyone there in the chat, Sir Carlos, Sir Ruven, Heather Maxwell, Mark Louis Carpio, Romel Buencilio, Sir Derek Conay, Janus Azucena, and Artur. Who else are there?
We have quite a few new visitors. Welcome
Yeah.
to the Timeless Gamer podcast, everybody. Thank you very much for passing by and hanging around. We're very honored that you're here. And well, thanks very much for all the engagement here in the chats, because that's what keeps the conversations lively as well.
And of course, as always, guys, our bodies and video games may go out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain.
Timeless.
Timeless.
There you go.
Let's hear one timeless for Sir Dan.
Timeless.
There you go.
Timeless.
Thank you,
Boom.
Sir Dan. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next time.